Okay, well, welcome to this evening's Better Life seminar. It's the third in the series, and this week's seminar is on ableism in fashion. The Better Life seminar series has been running for 4 years at London College of Fashion, and this year it's about isms in fashion. London College of Fashion wants to use fashion to drive change, build a sustainable future, and improve well-being. And this series allows us to raise awareness of issues in fashion that we consider can have a negative impact on psychological well-being, and by raising awareness we hope to improve this psychological well-being. So this series, as last year, is concerned with understanding the relationships among psychology, fashion and well-being. So we're very proud this week to have 3 speakers. I'm delighted to say that we've got Paralympian Steph Reid, and are very timely with the Paralympics on in Sochi at the moment, very well timed. And we have Kelly Knox, model, and we also have Michael Shamash, who's an actor and a lecturer. So Kelly Knox aims to break down the negativity towards disability and challenge perceptions on beauty. Kelly was Britain's missing top model in 2008. She's modelled for Marie Claire UK, Marie Claire China and Diva magazine. She works on many campaigns and has also worked for Vogue.com. She does charity work including REACH, which is the Association for Children with Upper Limb Deficiency, Park Avenue Disability Resource Centre, and she's worked for the London Book on Equal Measures event. So Kelly's done a lot more than this, but I've had to reduce it to get the information on one slide. I'm sure Kelly will talk a lot more about what she does. Steph Reid was the Great Britain Paralympian. She does the 100 metres, 200 metres and long jump. She's broken 3 world records in 2 months, and she won the 2012 silver long jump medal at the Olympics. Steph has a BSc in biochemistry from Queen's University in the USA and is now studying a master's in nutrition. She was the face of Channel 4's Paralympic coverage when the Paralympics were on last year in the UK. And Michael Shamash is a writer, researcher, social work lecturer and a disabled person. He's an expert in social user involvement, and Michael has written extensively on the relationship between fashion and disability. Michael wants disabled people to feel confident with their body image and the fashion world to understand that diversity is stylish. Okay, so each speaker will speak for 20 minutes and then we'll have the discussion. We're going to start with Steph, who's going to talk to us now. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. I have spent the majority of my life as an ableist. I believed that a disability was a bad thing, something that needed to be overcome. And I believed the best way to overcome a disability was to do whatever it took to look as normal as possible. If you're blind, it's important that you learn normal mannerisms, normal facial expressions, things the rest of us take for granted because we learn them visually without even trying. If you have cerebral palsy in an arm or a leg, it's important you learn how to stand or sit with that limb tucked behind so no one can see it. I was born able-bodied, but when I was 16, I was involved in a boating accident. I was run over and I was caught in the propellers and I became a leg amputee. And this is where I now talk about how my eyes were opened and I realized that people with disabilities were just like everyone else, except that it wasn't true. I was still an ableist. My prosthetics team praised my hard work and dedication to improving my walking gait, but it was mostly because I wanted to fool people into thinking that I was normal and just as able as they were. I have always loved sports. So my mom thought that it would be a great idea after the accident to take me to a local disabled sports club. I refused to get out of the car because I didn't want to be associated with disability sport. My husband, of 5 years now, Brent, is a paraplegic. I turned him down when he first asked me out. And if I'm honest, a lot of it had to do with his wheelchair. I wanted to be in an equal relationship. I didn't know very much about paraplegia, but I knew that I didn't want to be a caregiver. To be fair, even Brent carried his own undertones of ableism. Despite being paralyzed from the age of 6, he confessed his preference to not date someone who was in a wheelchair. So here you have two disabled ableists. What hope is there for the rest of society? The point of this is to acknowledge the fact that ableism runs deeply through the fabric of our society, and it is important to talk about it honestly and openly, instead of pretending to believe things that we think are politically correct. This is where fashion comes in. When you get rid of the money and the commercialism, fashion is about creativity and innovation, which gives it a unique platform to challenge some of the deep-rooted beliefs that we hold as a society about ourselves. What makes a life worthwhile? What makes a human being valuable, worth putting on a billboard? What makes them beautiful? For me, a true genius, I think the highest form of creative and critical thought is seen in those people who problem solve and create art outside of pre-existing paradigms. They are not biased by how things are normally done. They are brave enough to explore routes that we don't even realize exist. One of my chores growing up was emptying the dishwasher. Now, I hated doing it because our kitchen was really badly designed and our dishwasher was like a million miles away from the drawer that we put the cutlery in. But at 10 years old, after watching my mom, I took over. And for years, I tried to develop techniques so I could make the least amount of trips, mostly revolving around how many knives and forks I could carry in both hands. Several years on, Brent came over to our house, and I'd asked him to unload the dishwasher as I was clearing the rest of the table. What he did stopped me in my tracks. After assessing the situation, Brent fiddled with a plastic mold that held the knives and forks, and he lifted it out of the dishwasher and carried the whole thing in one go over to the cutlery drawer. For years, I had accepted my mom's example of how to unload the cutlery, and I accepted that template as normal. I tried to improve it, and I did manage to speed up the process, but I was still only problem solving within an old paradigm. Brent was not confined by a pre-existing notion of normal when it came to unloading the cutlery. He displayed a much higher form of thinking and creativity, and he found the best solution. I realize this is a very mundane example, but the lesson I learned struck me enough that I still remember this years on. As a designer, as a photographer, as anyone involved in the fashion industry, what is your first thought when you come across a disabled model? Oh, they would be so pretty if. They will be easy to work with because actually if I photograph them from this angle, you can't really tell that they're missing a limb. Will the public find it difficult to relate to this image and buy this product? What is problematic with all of these thoughts is that they are imposing a standard of normalcy, the value of able-bodiedness on those who don't quite fit that mold. It doesn't work, and it never will. When you try and make something or someone, this is something that they are not, you will always end up with a second-rate version of the original. I would never stand up and say that fashion owes disabled people the right to appear in campaigns or on runways. For me, this isn't about being politically correct or ticking boxes. For me, this is the wrong way to think about fashion and ableism. We are wired as human beings to appreciate beauty. And it's not a bad thing, and it doesn't make us bad people. Fashion is a visual art, and the pictures are meant to capture our attention and imagination, and beauty plays a significant role in that. But beauty is not a static concept. And as we progress and mature, both as individuals and as a society, our definition of beauty changes and progresses as well. We begin to see the world through a new set of glasses. The truth is, the fashion world is already behind. And actually, it should be a little embarrassed that an industry that prides itself on creativity and forward thinking is getting its butt kicked by children and parents in suburban America. What I want to show you is a collection of Halloween costumes that people in wheelchairs have come up with. So this first one here, we have Batman in the Batmobile. Here we have a motorcycle chick enjoying her Harley Davidson. Next we have a deep sea diver in a shark tank. For me, these are incredibly powerful images because of what they represent. These kids and their families are making a very powerful statement. They aren't interested in being normal. They are celebrating what is different about them and putting it to good use. In this moment, they are not thinking about this wheelchair as a mobility device. It has become a new outlet for creativity. I bet they are even making a few able-bodied kids wish they had wheelchairs. This is what happens when you clear your head from perceptions of normal and you celebrate instead what is right in front of you. Few people embody this idea as well as my friend Sophie. He's the founder of the Alternative Limb Project. Now, Sophie is an incredibly gifted silicone artist who now partners with prosthetists to create beautiful, creative limbs for amputees. Now, Sophie, as you can see, can make incredibly lifelike feet and hands. I mean, to look at them, you probably wouldn't even be able to tell the difference between a real leg and one of Sophie's creations. But that is not her only passion. As Sophie was making these lifelike limbs, she found herself asking, why try and replace what was lost with something normal? Why not take full advantage of the creative opportunity to replace the limb with whatever you want? To me, Sophie is an example of a pioneer, someone who thinks outside of the normal paradigm. Why make just replacement limbs for amputees when instead of limbs, you can make them accessories, fashion statements like a purse or jewelry, but on a completely different level? Nothing functions better or looks better than a real foot. That is reality. But instead of spending your whole life trying to get as close as you can to a normal limb, but never quite being able to get there, Sophie says, forget about it. Stop striving for normal. I have something different. I have something better. Channel 4 won the television rights to cover the London 2012 Paralympic Games. For the first time ever, BBC was only awarded the Olympics. The BBC had never put much effort into Paralympic coverage, as they felt it had limited commercial appeal due to a lack of interest from the public. Channel 4 proved the problem wasn't with the Paralympics. It was with BBC's perception of the Paralympics, which tainted how they presented it. The BBC had one paradigm to work off of, and that was their method for covering the Olympics. But the Paralympics are not the same as the Olympics. Now, I don't mean in terms of athletic quality, but I mean in terms of the feel of the games, the human connection, the unique ability to inspire. And as I said before, when you try and force something to be what it is not, you will always end up with a second-rate version of the original. Channel 4 took the Paralympics as they were and highlighted all the unique aspects of the game. It started with a very tongue-in-cheek ad campaign, the Super Freaks. A little risque for them, but why not just say what everyone else was already thinking? Their coverage was young, it was fresh, it was original. Instead of your usual nightly sports summary every night during the Paralympics, they launched The Last Leg, a comedy show, to do the daily roundup. Television ratings were through the roof. Channel 4 changed the way this country understands Paralympic athletes. This is the power of removing the lens of ableism, the idea that normalcy should be what we were all striving for. I have seen the transformation firsthand in the world of elite sport. I've loved sport and played sports my whole life. One of my biggest passions growing up was basketball, similar to netball. Before I became an amputee, I was the leading scorer on my team, averaging about 25 points a game. As soon as I got my first sport leg, after becoming an amputee, I went straight back to basketball. Now I was still the leading scorer, averaging about 20 points a game. But I now played very differently. My biggest assets prior were my speed and my agility. Most of my points were scored off of layups and breakaways. But these were no longer my assets. So I spent the summer learning how to shoot from the field. I also developed a new strategy with my coach. Athletes on the opposing team literally laughed when they saw me come out of the locker rooms. This was the attitude to disability sport 12 years ago. Now, most teams at this point were playing man-on-man defense. So when we were warming up, I would do this really half-hearted limping run, just really hamming the whole situation up. So their coach would have me guarded by the slowest person on their team. I racked up most of my points in the first quarter until they finally clued in and got a different defender on me. As a contrast, 2 years ago, I competed at an open university meet in Texas in the long jump against able-bodied competitors. I came third in the meet. I was approached by the mother of a 17-year-old girl after the competition who also competed. She gave me a half-hearted congratulations and went on to tell me how lucky I was to be able to compete on an amazing blade that gave me a huge advantage against her daughter and the rest of the field. Wildly inaccurate, but I politely thanked her, and as I walked away, I smiled. What an amazing change in public attitude towards disability sport in less than a decade. It is worth thinking about where you lie on the ableism spectrum, if for no other reason than for the freedom shedding old paradigms gives you. At its heart, fashion should be about forward thinking and new forms of expression. Fashion has never been about normalcy. Words are really important to me because they reveal a lot about our subconscious thoughts. My least favorite question when someone is asking me about my sport is, do you compete in the normal Olympics? To which I will always respond, no. I compete in the abnormal ones. And I smile sweetly until they clue in. A year and a half ago, a lady came up to me after I'd spoken at an event, and she was really excited about the Paralympics, and she wanted to learn more. It was a new world to her, and she was really nervous and desperately trying to use the right language and not make any faux pas. For the first time in my life, I heard someone refer to the normal Olympics as the ordinary Olympics, which by extension made the Paralympics extraordinary. My hope with regards to ableism in the fashion world is that one day I will hear the following conversation between two photographers, two stylists or two directors. Hey, I heard you were signed to the able-bodied model. Gosh, sorry about that. How boring. Thank you.
I'm adopting the no-tech, low-tech approach. So just me you're going to hear and no slides, but hopefully it'll be worth your while coming along. Right. So, let's begin looking at ableism. As a society, we place such store by our appearance. The anxiety we are meant to feel if we are not attractive or do not feel ourselves to be attractive is immense. Most people, both disabled and non-disabled, are not represented in adverts, magazines and television programmes. The construction of beauty is such a narrow one. In this rigid hierarchy, disabled people often don't have a chance to be valued as stylish and elegant. Let me give you a little bit about my personal background. I suppose it will help illustrate what I'm going to discuss. I'm a person of restricted growth. Born in I have 3 siblings, none of whom are of restricted growth themselves. And we were always encouraged, luckily my mother had always had an interest in clothing, and she always enjoyed taking us all out to the shops, and we all, very much, it was something that we all did. So we never felt very uncomfortable with the world of clothes. My father, who was probably a bit more buttoned up, I remember once saying to me, and it was the time when, if you remember, Benetton, which dates me a bit, had come out with all these various shades of pink sweater. And my father said, Michael, don't wear this, you'll be noticed. And I said, Dad, look at me, whatever I wear, whatever colour, I'm afraid to say, I will be noticed. So it is important, actually, that we know that, that you're born, that I was born as I am now. So what we need to challenge is that the human body is so wonderfully varied and diverse, and we all have the potential to be seen neither as lacking or ugly, but as uniquely gorgeous. There has to be a sea change in how disabled people are seen. We can no longer be confined by such limited horizons. At various moments, there have been attempts to address this issue, most notably in the late 1990s, when the Style magazine, Dazed and Confused, ran a photo shoot with designs by Alexander McQueen and photographs by Nick Knight. So here we had 2 doyens of the fashion industry trying to challenge the usual assumptions about disabled people. Disabled people were dressed in clothes by McQueen and photographed by Knight. And this caused a real groundswell. It was commented on. It was something that we felt would change. It last felt as if the mainstream media, amidst the fashion establishment, was acknowledging a more plural and inclusive concept of style. It was a great moment. There was hope, a hope for disabled people's community were no longer outcasts. There was a real surge of activity. I remember competitions to find models from diverse images. There were local fashion shows. I was involved in organising an inclusive fashion show called In Our Fashion. And there were column inches devoted to disabled people's style. I wrote a piece for The Guardian about the event and what it symbolised. There was talk about disabled models and designers, and it seemed as if we would at last be having our sachet along the catwalk. It's always interests me as to why this moment failed. I mean, when I look at the particular show that I was involved in organising, In Our Fashion, it was run at Camden Town Hall on a really wet autumn evening, and it felt that there was an inadequate sense of glamour. And in a way, that moment, it felt a moment had been lost. For all the hullabaloo that this engendered, the actual results were negligible. There was no continuity. And despite promises made by major designers and retailers that all would change, within a short period it was business as usual. A short digression perhaps is needed. Due to a social link, I was invited to both Pret-a-Porter and haute couture shows at Dior in Paris. For me, it was wonderful, thrilling, and very glamorous. But I was aware that I was very much an outsider. The fashion models were all tall, leggy, no curves. I, on the other hand, am short and round. It's really interesting. I wrote a piece about my experience of fashion, which I called New Orthopedic Boots and Incontinence Panties. I took the inspiration from the album by Ian Dury, who's one of the few openly disabled music performers. And what I feel is that garments that are seen as attaching a stigma to the disabled person should actually be reclaimed. But actually the things that we have that are differences are rather beautiful, and that we shouldn't be kind of pigeonholed into one image that dominates our conception of what is beauty. The debate about size zero and the defence of the fashion establishment's all-powerful body image agenda shows how far we need to travel to challenge cliched concepts of body and beauty. Yet, I feel the designers and suppliers of clothing, in a way allied to what Steph was saying, are missing a trick. We live in an area where, despite so much current negative publicity about disabled people and policies that actually do act on restricting the potential disabled people have, that disabled people are both more vocal, visible, and actually living independent lives with, in some cases, disposable income. Living in the community, surviving life-limiting illnesses. As a result, the fashion industry is ignoring disabled people at their peril. Inclusion may actually be profitable. There is more, though, than simply some kind of cost-benefit analysis. There is a moral justification for this. I've always believed that full inclusion is not simply about healthcare, housing, transport, education, income, but is equally about your identity and self-worth and how you express them. It is this that makes access to style so important. Ethical clothing should not only be about the ethics of production, but also the ethics of consumption. Fashion has the wonder of being simultaneously utterly ephemeral and totally profound, much like life. Everyone wants to look good, but good on their own terms. I used to work at a disabled people's organisation in East London, and I interviewed a group of people who would attend. And one of them was a man with Down syndrome, for whom it was really important to look good. It was important to look stylish. He said, I want to look posh. And it's important that people with particular needs. One of the people I interviewed was a woman with very severe arthritis. So there are issues around how she could fasten her clothes, but also the kind of clothes that she could use and feel comfortable in for dressing, undressing, you know, for things that make you feel comfortable in what you're wearing. But at the same time, she had a strong sense of her own style. She used these things not as something to restrict herself, but as something to empower herself. And I feel it's very important that that is acknowledged. I'm a person of restricted growth, and I've never known anything else other than being of restricted growth. And I can't go around thinking, oh, I wonder what would happen if I was tall, because it would be a real waste of time. And it's not going to happen anyway, and I don't know what the consequence would be. And I've lived my life at this size, and all the responses that I've gathered have been at this size, so I don't really want to change that. And I like the way I look, and I like the way I appear, and I'm interested in the way I look and the way I appear. So it provides me with A, an interest, and B, you know, some form of narcissistic reflection, so that's no bad deal. So we need to give disabled people a say over clothes and the environment in which they're bought. We need to be able to discuss our needs with those in a position of power within the fashion industry and see that these result in actions being taken. We need to see our beauty expressed in fashion shows, television programmes and advertising campaigns. Again, when you listen to what Steph was saying about Channel 4's coverage of the Paralympics, it really did provoke a sea change. It made disabled people be presented in a positive manner. It made the activities they did seem positive. It wasn't special pleading. It was good. It was powerful. It was strong. And that energy needs to be sustained. We need to make fashion courses aware that the human body is diverse and beautiful and design accordingly. The catwalk should reflect this. Maybe we should change the name of the catwalk, maybe the catwheel. It would be an acknowledgement for disabled people, but it could also be it would be an advance for disabled people, but it could also be an acknowledgement of fashion for all. Let's use an event like tonight's, the discussion about ableism, to be a real start. Enough tokenism, enough false dawns and vague promises never to be fulfilled. Let's ring in change. I've spent far too long waiting for this. I was looking at the amount of things I've written and they all seem to say something very similar. But what needs to be done? That disabled people have their own beauty, but we all are beautiful. We're all differently beautiful, diversely beautiful, and that needs to be acknowledged. In the light of the Paralympics, when disabled people were shown as out proud and successful, we need to continue that momentum. Thank you.
Hi everyone.
Yes.
My name is Kelly Knox. I am a model, and I starred as lead actress in Channel 4's hidden camera comedy show, I'm Spasticus, in August last year. I'm an ambassador for the charity REACH, and I very much support the work of Models of Diversity and the charity United Response. I was first submersed into the world of modelling and disability after entering and winning Britain's Missing Top Model back in 2008. This was my first ever photo shoot. My dream was never to be a model. On my original application form, my reason for entering was to inspire people who were also different, encouraging them to embrace their own uniqueness and to show there is more than one beauty ideal. All my family and friends did not understand why I was entering a modelling show for disabled women. I told them, you don't see me as disabled, I don't consider myself as disabled, but society sees part of my left arm missing and will label me as a disabled person. The word disabled was never part of my vocabulary. I feel it's such a dated, negative word. You only have to look up the word disabled online to understand why. This is what you get. weakened, lame, maimed, helpless, powerless, incapable, worn out, out of action, broken, bedridden, mutilated, challenged, invalid or invalid, useless, deactivated, done for, done in, wrecked and mangled. None of these words describe me or the disabled people that I know as individuals. Most words starting with this are negative: disgrace, disadvantage, disappoint, dislike, discriminate, disrespect. Well, apart from the word disco, of course. Why can't we live in a society where we are uplifted by words and empowered by the images we see? Fashion really does have the power to change lives. I know I have the power to change lives, and to me, that means everything. Now I'm going to read an email I received a few months back. It's from a young lady who contacted me shortly after winning Britain's Missing Top Model in 2008, and she sent me an email a few years later. Hi Kelly, not sure if this is where I can contact you directly, but my name is Lucy. I'm also missing my left hand. I messaged you on Facebook a couple of years ago just to get some advice and stuff. I don't expect you to remember, it was yonks ago. But at the time, I was really struggling with it, and I just wanted to say again how thankful I am for your advice. You have literally changed my life, and I am so grateful. I used to wear my prosthetic arm all the time, even for just going to the shops, but now I haven't worn it for years, and it's so much better without it. I'm now going into my 3rd year at uni, where I study photography. Starting out was such a massive step for me, especially having to meet loads of new people, but as you said, I found that no one cared or even noticed. I just feel like deciding to contact you was the best decision of my life, because you gave me the inspiration to be a much more confident, happier person, and for that I'm truly grateful for. I hope you're okay, and I look forward to hearing back from you. This is what drives me in my work. Reaching out to young girls who are struggling with their self-esteem and confidence through the power of fashion, TV and the media. I believe it's our birthright to feel comfortable in our own skin, celebrate individuality and never feel the need to conform to the ideals and stereotypes that fashion set for us all. Fashion is all about uniqueness, so why doesn't fashion celebrate diversity in all its beauty? I love this quote by Maya Angelou. It's time for parents to teach young people early on that in diversity there is beauty and there is strength. Models should never feel defined by their age, colour, size or difference. So why are they? There's me in Marie Claire, shot by a Rankin. Jordan Dunn, Carmen and Crystal Wren. We are all defined by the above. I am defined as a disabled model. Jordan Dunn is defined as a black or ethnic model. Carmen is defined as an 81-year-old model. Crystal is defined as a plus-size model. Why can't we all just be called models? Think New. Think New was a campaign for Oslo City in Norway. My images were all across billboards throughout the city centre to promote thinking new about beauty. For the evolution of fashion, we need inclusivity, we need change, and we need to think new. 10 million disabled people live in the UK with a combined annual spending power of over £80 billion. That is huge spending power that isn't being tapped into. People with disabilities are consumers of fashion, love fashion and want to look good just like everybody else. We need to change the stereotypes about disability. Disabled people are beautiful, fashionable, trendy, strong, confident, happy, and we have money to spend. When Britain's Missing Top Model was aired in 2008, I remember seeing a video clip of a model at London Fashion Week giving an interview. Her words were, New York Fashion Week would rather burn down than see a disabled person on their catwalk. Now, fast forward 6 years, designer Carrie Hammer casted role models for her debut show at New York Fashion Week. Dr. Danielle Shapuk, a wheelchair user, was the star of this show. Carrie's show's goals were to change the world and show off her collection. What a great image. Last year, I spent a week in Beijing. I was booked to walk in the Trends for 2013 fashion show for P&G Beauty Vision House and to shoot for Marie Claire China. This was my proudest moment in my modelling career so far. I felt completely honoured that P&G Beauty, the world's leading beauty company, recognised and embraced me as a model. It's clear why they are leaders. P&G think new. They are creating new pathways for the future of beauty. Beauty really is for everyone. It's my Marie Claire China images. The last 6 years have been a real eye-opener for me. I now know what it feels like to be put in a box and labelled as disabled. I never felt disabled until I started modelling. I'm disabled by the attitudes of the fashion industry, not by my missing arm. Barriers need to be broken. Boundaries need to be pushed. It's the only way for disability to be normalised and accepted. We need to maximise talent and minimise those barriers. Disabled people break barriers, they fight, they overcome adversity, and they succeed. Things are changing, and I'm proud to be part of this movement. We all should be proud of who we are. We should never feel we are not beautiful enough, skinny enough, perfect enough, because perfection doesn't really exist. True beauty lies in embracing your individuality and allowing that beautiful light of yours to shine. Thank you.
Now I've got a mic. How's that? So for all the speakers, and maybe everybody in the room, might be something that we can begin to find a way forward, because as Michael flagged up, you know, early in the 90s, you thought there was an opportunity for things to begin changing, and yet you're still writing about the same thing. And so one of the things that clearly is staring us in the face is when there is a lack of diversity, not just in front of the lens, but behind the lens, in the corporate thinking that makes choices for us, in the boardrooms that have very little diversity in them, does it mean that until we can find ourselves in a position where we have that diversity at the decision-making process, at the creative process, that we will be struggling, because we are frequently operating, as you have all pointed out, with trying to help people empathize or understand or envision the benefits of diversity.
Okay. Can you hear us? Can you hear me? Right. Two things. Number one, yes, you do. It has to be sustained. It can't just be a little moment when everybody feels really virtuous. But number two, maybe something a bit more radical, which is, you know, a countercultural approach to design and fashion and your own shape, and actually looking outside, you know, mainstream media and mainstream. But at a mainstream level, it's quite clear. You know, you have a look at the bylines of a newspaper and you see the images, and I don't see anything very challenging. You know, you look at, you know, the range of looks that we think of as attractive, in inverted commas, is really a very limited range. So it kind of means that our perception of what is beautiful, or and more importantly, what beauty is a very limited one. And when we actually conform to this, you know, we have a look at, we live in an era of, you know, nips, tucks, Botox, Christ knows what. You know, how wonderfully liberating is that? I don't know. I'm not sure that it is. this is the kind of thing, and what I think, having been involved, so I'm hogging the limelight, but having been involved in that time in the 90s, was actually thought that was that moment, that possibly thinking in a more structural manner.
Yeah, Karen, I think you're definitely right. From all the younger people who are studying fashion now or have just graduated, I find they're the ones who really want the change, and they are creating the future of fashion. So I know in the future we will see a lot of diversity because it's what they want. You know, it is down to the decision makers. They're the ones that say, we want this. And, you know, from back in 2008 when I first started modelling, I can definitely see a change for now, but it's not happening quick enough. But again, change does happen overnight, and it can happen quite quickly. And I mean, as well, the Diesel Reboot campaign that was not so long ago, that was huge. A big brand like Diesel using a whole diverse range of models, including the wheelchair user. It's fantastic, but you can't just do this once in a blue moon. You know, same with Debenhams. This has to happen all the time for disability to be normalised and accepted, and then as well, that's going to educate people. You know, I understand how people can be fearful of disability. Before I entered Britain's Missing Top Model, I didn't know disabled people, and when I was in this house full of disabled people, I thought, what the hell have I done? You know, and it's only until you get to know, you know, all types of people, then you have a bigger understanding. And, you know, modern Britain is a diverse place, you know, and diversity represents modern Britain. So the people out there, the designers, the brands, you know, they are not, if they're not tapping into this, they are losing out on money, because diversity is the future, it is the present, it is now. So they need to get with the times and start embracing it, and, you know, use models with disabilities and other diverse models.
I think you're bang on, Karen. I think that the greatest source of fuel for change is always passion, but it's really hard to get people passionate about disability fashion when they don't have any experience with it. And I think that is key, and that's key to getting the different decision makers in there. I remember when I first started off in track, I had a really hard time getting a high quality coach to coach me. And I tried 3, and the 4th one I came across finally agreed, and I found out a year later he actually had a disabled son. And I think it's that connection, that's the ability to understand and to empathize. I think that's what's going to make the difference. And, you know, we've seen it in templates for trying to encourage more women to be CEOs and have that sort of executive power. And they're realizing that actually there is huge financial benefit to having a female perspective, the balance it provides. And I think, yeah, we need to find a way to get that diversity behind the scenes for sure.
Yeah, hi. I'd just like to build on this a little bit, I think. I love the idea that, yeah, diversity, we live in an ever more diverse society. I love the idea that counterculture might be the way forward. But I also think there are technology drivers that can really help this. And we see that many new industries have just come from nowhere we would even have imagined because of new media and things like this. I just wonder how the 3 of you see using new media and using new technology as a way of driving change.
I would like to hope that has the possibility. There's 2 or 3 things that make me wary. One is, you know, what's the area around Old Street called? The Silicon Roundabout or something. And it's just, you know, what I don't want, what I think I'm trying to say is I don't want new technology just to be handed over to newer versions of the same old thing. New technology needs, if it's going to be, it has to be democratic. It has to be there for people. And another problem with clothing is that the urge for cheap mass-produced issues around production deprivation may be a factor that has to be fought, so that you can have clothing that acknowledges production and acknowledges consumption, acknowledges the fact that that technologies will be developed that can enable, but there is the thing that works against that is as we've seen in the terrible tragedies in Bangladesh, where a lot of clothing is manufactured in pretty horrendous circumstances. So that's something that actually we have to challenge.
Actually, sorry, I'm not quite sure that I understood your question fully. When you say the ability of technology to change,
the new technologies in media that help you.
That's what I was going to ask. Okay.
Get beyond the way that we look, the way that mainstream fashion takes things.
So do you just mean like that there's more, the internet provides more abilities to get more pictures on in terms of?
There are all sorts of ways of getting messages out.
Gotcha.
Which are driven by technology. So how do you use them?
I'm not very techno-savvy, but I think hands down, technology has been the great equalizer for people with disabilities on so many different fronts. From the standpoint of, my husband is a software engineer, and years ago it might have been difficult to command a big salary, but if you can work from home on a computer anywhere, that matters. Likewise, it's when you have now digital cameras where images are so easily created and stored, you don't have to go through the whole process. I think there's definitely more opportunity, more ability to disseminate. If the big guns don't want to take it on, as you said, subculture, things can go viral on the internet quickly. But I think the key is that we're not doing things for the sake of doing things. We're doing things that are really good and that are really gripping and that will take the public by storm. I think that is definitely important.
Sorry, can I just add
yes,
something?
sorry.
That's all right. All I know, when disabled models are used, the media always pick up on it. There's always a story in the press, in magazines, in newspapers. But what really upsets me, when Carrie Hammer used the model, the wheelchair user for New York Fashion Week and for Diesel Rebuild, the journalists in the Daily Mail described her as wheelchair bound. And that really, really annoyed me, because how can you describe someone as wheelchair bound? They use a wheelchair, then someone is not in their wheelchair, 24/7. And I think it's all down to language, and the media is powerful and it can, change people's perceptions on disability, but the right people have to be writing about these like shoots and everything that goes on.
Hi, is this on? Yeah, okay. So first of all, I want to say something, and then I want to ask you a question for the three. First of all, about the pictures of disabled people in media, I think it's kind of dodgy, because on one side it can be like exotizing, I don't know if you say that word, like looking at disabled people as exotic instead of integrating them into society, which I think it's kind of dangerous. And then my question is that we've been talking about fashion production and fashion media, but what I would like to know is what it's like for you to experience of buying clothes within a shop, because I think that might be like a source of othering and discrimination and exclusion.
You get to know shops that have lines that you're more comfortable with, so you know what's what. And I like a kind of mix and match approach. So cheap and cheerful, with a little bit more style, with a bit of second hand, and you can kind of it's an interesting challenge. And maybe wishing to sound immodest, I'm sufficiently confident that I can ask what I want, and I know when I feel comfortable, and I know when it doesn't quite look right, and I think I like shopping more than I like buying, so that's a big help. You know, and I think that's part of the process. And it's absolutely true that the number of shops that you go into where they've got great big stairs and have agents that are really undisabled person friendly is very common, almost as if they're not, it's beyond their imagination to think that a disabled person will enter. But that's why I enjoy challenging it. It's fun.
So this is what's annoying about the word disability as well. How different are me, Steph and Michael, and you label us, all of us with that one word. Clothes, River Island, Topshop. I will go into any shop and wear what I want and buy what I want. You can go and buy clothes for dogs and cats these days, let alone human beings, which disabled people are human beings too.
I just wanted to pick up on the first statement that you made, like maybe it was almost just gratuitous, or I think I'm understanding it right. It was just showing a disabled model just for the shock value. Is that what you were getting at? What I wanted to say is, I think you are right, but in some ways, I wonder if that's a necessary step to get beyond that. Yes. People just need to go through that phase of let's just look at it, take it for what it is. I just think about, I just joined a new track group, all able-bodied, and you know, the first 2 weeks, people are literally craning their necks when I change legs just to see what's going on there. And now, you know, no one even notices, no one cares, there's legs lying everywhere. You know, it's just normal. And so I think that just might be a necessary stage, just put it out there, let people see, like, this is what it is, and this is reality. In terms of the clothing, I think, yeah, I mean, I think you just have to reach a point where, you know, you're confident enough just to walk in. You know, when I shoe shop, I have a high heel leg that I wear that, you know, it only fits 3-inch high heel shoes. And so I just shop and I have the leg tucked under my arm. And I just say, you know, what do you have that fits this? And I think you just have to reach a point where you're okay with it. And it's hard, but you get there.
Hi. This question is for Steph and Kelly. I would like to know, I know that you both modelled for Debenhams. I'd like to know, what was the public response to seeing your pictures out there when you did that campaign? What were people saying to you?
I just know that when it came out in the Evening Standard, I was on my way back from working, and there's people all around me with the Evening Standard open, looking at our pictures, you know, and I just thought, oh my God, that is me. I hope they don't recognise me. But I mean, looking on all the comments on the on Daily Mail and Evening Standard, the majority, 99%, I would say, is positive. You know, people want to see this image and they say, wow, you know, why hasn't this been done sooner? You know, it's refreshing. And I just feel like if people can see us doing it, then even someone who's not disabled, they think, oh wow, you know, these girls can feel like this, and then we can as well. So I just think it's been very positive from my point of view.
Yeah, I mean, it was just 100% positive. I think the ad, I mean, that was done almost 2 years ago?
Last year.
Last year. But, you know, it went absolutely viral on the internet. I see it crop up all the time on my Facebook feed, and, you know, friends kind of picking up, oh my goodness, we were looking at this and this was you. But I just think, you know, the public is so craving for a change. People are so bored with the standard. You know, just the usual models walking down. I think I saw in the paper maybe a month ago, huge news story. One of the major fashion brands actually had models walking down with smiles on their face. I mean, that was crazy. But I just think, you know, everyone is clearly so bored with this. So what is stopping the change? I don't know. I don't get it.
Thank you.
Can I just a couple of things. First thing is, you know, the change in zeitgeist from BBC's approach to the Paralympics, and then you know the Channel 4 taking it over, shocking us a little bit and thinking, oh God, are they really going to mess it up and offend everybody? And then everyone gets behind it, and there's this complete euphoria which sort of takes over and almost overshadows sort of the Olympics as such. Is that an approach that really a retailer needs to take? And are there any retailers who are starting to move in the right direction? And maybe, is that something that people who are disabled should actually use social media and actually gang up and support those which are doing it. And let's find a people's champion. Let's find a champion who is doing something. And the rest of the retailers are going to cotton on at some point in time. But maybe rather than waiting for a retailer to do something, maybe they need a bloody kick up the backside, or one that you feel can carry it off and do something with it. I don't know. Worth a try?
Well, I mean, I think Kelly hit the nail on the head when she talked about the spending power of, I think it was simply just the disabled people in Great Britain. I think we forget how much power we have as consumers.
There's a real power, but you know, I suspect it's all a kind of. I've often thought, why is the fashion industry so conservative? I think the sort of vested interests are kind of very comfortable in the fact that, okay, our permeation is only so great, but we control that level of permeation. And I think it's almost that. It's that, okay, we don't need to challenge, so we create this kind of self-fulfilling sort of prophecy that X number of people are really interested in the fact that, is it one model's got a gap tooth? I mean, gee whiz. It's in my team. One bite's not great. You know, and it's that level of you know, minutiae that's sort of seen as shocking and exciting. But I do kind of think that there's enough of a market that actually doesn't need to be challenged, because challenging is too much like hard work. So you keep that kind of, you replicate that cycle, and it's profitable enough and big enough and newsworthy enough, and we all go to Milan, and we all go to New York, we all go to London, and we all have a freebie, and we go to Paris and it's lovely, and so on. And I think that's what happens. And I think actually it's very comfortable. It's very comfortable, so we all like it. And then every now and then we have a disabled person comes along, oh no, well, what's jolly good, we're going to have somebody new and novel and interesting. And nothing much happens, but we've let them you know, vent their spleen, and then we can go back to business as usual. And I think that's really what it's about.
There is a government statistic on disabled people from last year, 2012, that they had a disposable income of 8.8 billion in the UK. That's the amount of money.
Was it 80 or 8.8?
80. Lots of being ignored.
I think it's always going to be a struggle if you're up against a retailer who's more organized and has more money than you. And you know, they're always going to have more money, but you know, that doesn't speak against the fact that we can be more organized. And I think, for example, models of diversity, that's a great example of people that are gaining momentum, getting organized and getting ready to pull this off. And I think that is what it's going to take.
Absolutely. Questions? Where's the microphone? Sorry. Oh, okay, that's the next one. Okay.
I really love what you said about how you are disabled by attitudes more than anything else. And it's come up time and time again in these lectures about how the drive for change comes from new designers and from students. And I was just wondering what you thought should be done within education and within this kind of event is so important to teach people these things. And you said that exposure creates passion, and experience creates passion. And I was just wondering, I mean, I totally agree with that. I was just wondering what should be done to encourage that exposure and that passion.
Can I just answer there? I think you know, it's really important what you're saying, that London College of Fashion is taking this step in raising awareness. I mean, these seminar series are not here by chance. You know, we've organised these events to raise awareness for these very issues which do challenge the status quo in fashion. And I think that's really important, and it's important to acknowledge that this is taking place at London College of Fashion, and that we do want to make a difference to make lives better for everybody. And every single event of this is the third seminar in the series, has challenged the very narrow stereotype of what's beautiful, what's attractive, what is a model, every single one. And it, you know, there does need to be a change. We know that, whether it's for older models, for models of colour, for models of all sorts of ability or disability. We need to see people who are different, and that's what everybody wants. That's what we're all saying, and it needs to be sustained. So I think, I think this is a great arena for raising awareness. And we said last week at the session, people need to take this forward. We need to educate people of what's going on here in the seminars, but take it forward, keep it moving. So now I'll pass on to speakers.
Sorry, I've probably spoken enough and probably spoke out. It has to be, because I've done some work on a similar field with visual design. What you need to do is it has to be a central part of fashion design or any form of product design, but actually you look at inclusion. And it's not sort of a little add-on. It has to be something central. Like you're looking at issues around diversity in any area of academia. It's by making it central, by making it actually a core part. That's how you achieve stuff.
Caroline, you just absolutely smashed it, so I don't think I can add to that.
Thank you. Thank you. And to follow on from what Michael's just said, a cognitive psychologist, Donald Norman, talks about inclusive design is designing for everyone, and he says inclusive design is good design, and it's not special for any particular person. It's inclusive.
Can I just add one?
Yeah, of course.
I think also the change has to be greater than just in the fashion world. I don't think you can change a set of beliefs just in one, section or one box of your head. Was it the quote from Maya Angelou?
Yeah.
I think it starts much deeper than that, much earlier. And if we really want to see a change, it has to take place across the whole of society. But it can definitely start with fashion.
Mm-hmm.
I think the media and TV as well, they have a lot of power,
But even saying that, paying my TV license to subsidize BBC, that's us paying. We should take that power back.
That's true. Yeah.
Do it. Okay, very patient question.
Firstly, I'd just like to say thank you to all the panellists. I'm really impressed that this event has been put on, and really pleased that London College of Fashion has taken this so seriously, because it is one of the least talked about issues. You never get events like this, really, so it's brilliant. And so the question, the thing I'd like to talk about is how you think this issue fits into wider society, because obviously, I very much see fashion and the fashion industry and the fashion media in particular as a sort of echo chamber for what's going on around us. And obviously we're in the midst of a serious economic crisis, and one of the most worrying things for me is the way that people with disabilities in this country are being attacked. So the cuts in benefits and public services and stuff. So for me, it chimes that whilst we're experiencing this, we're also seeing this kind of exclusion in the fashion industry. And I wondered whether you think that it is actually possible to change the fashion industry in a bubble, or whether there is this is part of changing society for as a whole and making things more equal.
No, it doesn't exist in a vacuum. But when the world as it's constructed is made up of lots of little bits, it's an incremental process. And one of the things about fashion that makes it interesting is you look at people, you see the way you clock what they're wearing, you make assumptions, it's quite a profound process for something that feels to be so superficial. And that's why it matters. Now, whether, yes, it's absolutely true that nothing exists, this is a world of interdependence. So, yep, it's clear that, attacks on disabled people in terms of benefits and services may also mean a lowering of your people's images. People's image of them become consequently adversely affected. People's perception of disabled people becomes adversely affected. You know, maybe we're having a bit of a backlash, but then in that case you need to stand up. And part of that standing up is looking strong. And part of that looking strong is looking good on our own terms.
Disabled people are the most invisible section of society as a whole, so of course they're going to be ultra invisible in fashion. I mean, it wasn't until, I'm not sure what year exactly, but in the 1980s when there was the first black model on the front cover of a magazine. I mean, how ridiculous is that? It took until the 80s until they had a black model on the front cover of Vogue magazine. And you know, attitudes in general, when it comes down to colour, have changed so much over the years. So, you know, disabled people will get their opportunity too. And I think change does happen really quickly, and it is happening.
I was just I think you're right. It's going to require a holistic change. I think it's really hard to see change just in one area. You need to see it just across society. But I think we've already seen proof through the Paralympics. This can happen, as Kelly said, it can happen quite quickly. But I feel like me personally, I tend to operate on two very different paradigms. On the one, you know, I want to go out and change the world and make people see how I see things. On the other hand, I mean, the best advice I ever gotten was from my dad, who just said, look, you need to operate as though the world is not going to change and find a way to survive. You know, Stephanie, you're going to make a terrible waitress, so you better do really well in school. and to an extent, he was right. And so I think in some ways, by living a bit in both, you know, you find a way, you know, to function, to survive, and also to move forward. And I just want to, you know, reaffirm what Michael said. I think, you know, when I first became an amputee, a lot of people would come and say, oh, you know, don't worry about it. It doesn't matter what you look like on the outside. It's what inside that counts. And actually, it's not 100% true. You know, how you look on the outside, you know, definitely changes how you feel on the inside. You know, we are whole people. You know, we're not ethereal spirits that kind of move through the air. You know, we have bodies, and you know, the matter, our matter, you know, it is important and it matters. And so I think, as Michael said, looking good makes you feel good, and it helps to portray an image of strength.
Are there any other questions? Oh, loads. So, and then you, and then
it's a question for Kelly, really. When we had this session a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking about racism in fashion, lots of people who spoke on the panel saying they come across lots of very overt instances of discrimination in castings and things like that, where people would say things that are completely unacceptable in day-to-day life outside of casting. I just wondered, in the time that you've been modelling since you won the competition, how the attitudes have changed within the industry, because although it's obviously great that the public are having such a fantastic reaction to the campaigns you're in, I think the very first question that was asked was, this has to come from within the industry, and I wondered how those attitudes have changed over time, and if you do face any discrimination, how you deal with that in the moment when you're there going for a job or on a particular shoot.
For me, I don't really go to castings. The people who I've worked with, I think the only casting I have had is the Debenhams casting. Previous to that, every person I've worked with have approached my management and said, we want to work with Kelly. So I haven't suffered any discrimination in that respect, but I do know when I won the show, it was all very much hyped up, saying you're going to be doing this and you're going to be doing that. And, you know, I was completely up here thinking, wow, you know, this is going to change my life. And then I was signed to Take Two Model Management. I felt like they were more concerned that I was a size 10 rather than that my arm was missing. I had I did a shoot for Laha magazine, a 7-page beauty shoot. That was my first page job. And then the phone call stopped, the email stopped. Within 6 months, they went into administration, and I thought, thanks a lot. I felt like I've been kicked into the gutter. You know, I just thought, like, what am I going to do now? I was completely new to the industry, new to modelling, new to disability. I didn't know what I was going to do. Luckily, I found Angel, Models of Diversity, you know, and they of course, Models of Diversity believe in everything that I believed in. And it was through the support of Angel and her team that enabled me to, you know, meet people and find my own way. And, you know, that's what I have been doing. So at the beginning, it was very hard. You know, if I had low self-esteem, I could have easily thought, do you know what, I'm not good enough, you know, I don't deserve this, I can't do this. I was left in the gutter, so I could have easily just completely gave up, but I completely believed in myself. I believed in what I could achieve. I believed in the power of the lives that I could change by being out there, so I didn't give up. And, you know, that's why I'm sitting here now, you know, and I could have easily given up then. So coming back, you know, 6 years later, I feel a lot has changed. Last year was my most successful year. Whether that's because of the Paralympics, I don't know. But, you know, again, with the Paralympics, how amazing was the Paralympics? And then, you know, where is everyone now? You know, why they are not in advertisement campaigns? You know, you can't just, you know, wait every few years for, you know, a brand to use a disabled model, or for 4 years for the Paralympics to come around. You know, I think disabled people need to be celebrated, not all the time, but just as much as everybody else. You know, and I think we need more positive imagery of disabled people. Then that will help people to, you know, change their perceptions on disability, and the world will be a happier place, and that's what we all want, surely.
Okay,
Hi, I was wondering, you were talking about like Britain is diverse. I think Kelly was saying that Britain is diverse and the campaign should be diverse, and I wondered, it made me think, and also it sort of reminded me of the Channel 4 Paralympics thing, which is really exciting, and I was thinking, oh, Britain's great, it does this kind of thing. Like, do you think that there's a difference, like, between like international fashion industry and international fashion campaigns and what goes on in this country, or I don't know, maybe it's this, like this part of Europe or anything? Is there kind of difference between different countries and different parts of the world?
Most of my work has been abroad, funnily enough. You know, the UK, I feel, even though we've got an amazing Paralympics, and so far behind. You know, I've had more support from international clients, which is quite surprising. Yeah, I don't know why. But, you know, modern Britain is a very diverse place, and, you know, you'd think that, I know if I had a brand, I would want all types of people in my clothes, because then that would represent every type of person, you know, who's able to buy the clothes.
I think they're definitely different countries, different cultures, they look at people differently. And the biggest thing that came to mind when you said that, I went to a competition in Brazil probably several years ago, and I went with a friend who was also an athlete. She'd been injured in a car accident, and so she was classed as having cerebral palsy, you know, but she'd had some brain damage, and as a result, I mean, most would just describe her as crazy in Canada. You know, she was loud, she didn't have a filter, she was a lot of fun. That's who she was. And then you go to Brazil, and while people in Canada would describe her as crazy, she was just a normal person in Brazil. They loved her. She was the most popular athlete on the team, and so I think there's definitely significant differences in terms of how different cultures view perhaps different types of disability, and I think that's really interesting to explore.
Last question of you.
Okay, very quickly then. So thank you very much, everybody. I'm sure I'm saying that on behalf of the audience, because I've found some brilliant insights. And I just wonder, Caroline, whether it might be something also you might think, What you three have flagged up is really about being on the front line of self-esteem issues to do with value judgments around appearance, which is to a certain extent what everybody feels, but maybe hasn't had to do quite, doesn't have so much quite self-knowledge around it, because they haven't had to work out quite so much. But in being able to talk about this transparently, and in being in a position where you're offering up bodies of diversity, you are benefiting the mental health of everybody. And I wonder, Caroline, whether there is a proper scientific, psychological assessment to be made about the value of something like that on behalf of the mental health of everybody, who we know are increasingly feeling under pressure to achieve these kind of unachievable body ideals.
I think that's a really good question, a really good point, Karen. Well, psychology has lots of measures for pretty much everything, but I think we'll all agree these three people here are quite exceptional, and they've spoken out in such fantastic ways that we all feel uplifted, I'm sure, and you know, it's really important to hear this. How much it's improved our self-esteem, you know, without measuring it, I wouldn't know, but being aware that to be in a room, I feel honoured to be in a room with these three people who've spoken so fantastically tonight about how we can make changes. I believe that they've put the foot in the door, for want of another word, about how we really need to make changes. I mean, this is, as I've said before, the third in these seminars, and each one has gone a little bit further. So resilient people are the key to well-being, actually, and we all should try to work very hard to develop resilience. And in fact, resilience is the underpinning characteristic of well-being. So it's not about happiness, it's about resilience. It's about bouncing back after something which is negative or hard or life-changing. Resilience is what makes well-being. That's the thing. So I think that's a fantastic ending, Karen, a really good question that you asked. Can we all please thank our speakers again tonight?